we almost feel that money is moving away from us. So the basic thing that we need to do is to know what best can we do as an individual, on an individual level, to ensure that you get out of that rat race, whereby you keep looking for money or feeling that money is actually avoiding you all the time. So to start us off is on financial planning. I believe the critical aspect that we need to take on an individual level is to start with financial planning. If we do not plan for our finances, we will always have a long month at the end of the month, as they say. So we need to do the planning. That is the basic point that we have to start from. And you'll appreciate why we need to do the financial planning. Nowadays, we have an effect of inflation that is affecting how finances are. You realize that the cost of items keep changing over time. So inflation is a real item that is affecting individuals each and every day, and we are not new to this. Even currently, you have the VAT aspect coming into place, and it affects prices. It spirals the inflation bit, and the cost of items go up. So it's important that we put that into consideration in our finances so that we get to counter it. So that's one critical aspect on why we need to do the financial planning, so that you shield yourself from the future cost, which will be higher than the present. You appreciate that? The second item that affects our financial planning, or the need for us to do the financial planning, is the changing life stage needs, whereby people want to enjoy life. You want to have freedom, isn't it? We want to go for holidays. You want to have your children going to the best school. You want to have a car. You want to own a house. You want to build a house. All these are critical. And without planning, we may not be able to attain those. So it's critical for us to put our finances into place by planning for them, so that we get to enjoy those other life opportunities which are good. The third issue is on investment. You realize that the traditional forms of investment are no longer the best. I know you could be wondering what traditional investments are. These are the investments that probably people expect them to have performed initially, but they are no longer favorable as such. So where you expect to be getting more money, nowadays is no longer giving you the money. So you have to think out of the box and do something that is more money generating than before. So I don't know if you could probably get some views on what are these traditional investments. Something that used to be giving money before, but currently with the current trend changes, we do not have them having working. Shares could be an example. That's good. Another area. There was a time when shares was really booming, but you realize that nowadays the issues of shares does not work anymore. So that is one of the examples. Pyramid schemes. You start talking about pyramid schemes. You're talking out of experience. Okay, maybe. Well, it could be considered, because I mean it was an opportunity where people were looking forward to making more money at a go. Quick kill, but again, it is already overtaken by events. Maybe just those are the few that we can talk about at the moment, but we'll progress from there. Another aspect that we need to put into consideration is the issue of appreciating the fact that if we do not plan, then we are bound to fail. So it's ultimately very critical. And I think this is actually one of the biggest aspects that people fail to do. We know we need to do it. So all these things are not new, but when it comes to the actual implementation, putting it into action, we fail to do that. And that is where the catch comes in. So we need to avoid putting ourselves into stress by planning for it. So I believe we are all together. Okay, just to take further into the inflation aspects, probably we could just do an example of what happens if we failed to plan our finances. And I think we can relate with the example that we have on the board. Currently, bread the cost of bread has shot up, isn't it? See, the prices of items have gone up. Mkate, today it's how much? Is it 50 shillings? Maybe on average. In 1996, that was about more than 10 years ago. It was at 15 shillings. You can imagine that.
It was bigger.
And it was bigger. Yeah, it's true. Currently, it's how many grams?
It's still 400.
It's 400 grams. I think initially it used to be more than that. It was
500.
500. So you can
The
tell.
crust was very good.
Yeah.
And it used to be tasty.
So you realize the impact of inflation. We need to shield ourselves from that. If my 50 shillings today cannot be able to, was able to buy more than 3 loaves of bread then. So meaning if I had that 50 bob that time, I would be comfortable. But today you are not. You only get 1 loaf. Projection of the cost again probably in the next 2 years. Given the trend, you will realize that probably by 2016 you'll be paying 70 shillings on a piece of bread. So it means again we are not going to be making any gains going backwards in terms of inflation. So you realize our expenditures will be keeping on going up over time, and unfortunately you realize our sources of income are always constrained. Petrol, the same case. A percentage increases over time. You realize between 96 and today we have it at 145%, 175 for milk. Milk is the one that has really shot up currently. The VAT is also coming in, it speeds it up, it adds on top of it. So we end up having a huge price to pay for whatever commodity we want to spend on. So the point is that inflation in itself is something that you can prepare yourself to face it if you do your proper financial planning. So it doesn't mean that with inflation you are meant to avoid spending, or rather you should not get to still enjoy the everyday life that you have. It means you just need to do the planning bit, and you'll at least be able to absorb the shocks of the price differences over time. So tuende mambo ya budgeting. When you plan for your finances, the basic tool that you can use to assess your finances is personal budgeting, whereby you do the budgeting of your finances, you plan for them. And I believe this is not something strange. Is it something strange? Budgeting? I know for finance people it's a day-to-day kind of activity due to the nature of their work. It's an advantage. But I don't know if anyone maintains a budget. Do you understand what a budget is? All of us understand. Margaret? What is a budget? A budget. Just briefly, in your layman's language, what is your understanding of budget? So ni kujipanga. It's planning. For budgeting, yeah, I think there's an aspect of planning, as you already mentioned. That is good. Any other opinion? Miriam?
Nafaa kufanya 1, 2, 3. Then you prioritize what is a must, because of course the needs are always more than the amount of money that you project.
Okay. Perfect. You've actually hit the nail on the head. That's basically what budgeting is all about. Knowing what you have and what I need to spend it on, directing them to the rightful areas that you need to spend on, and so that you get to know at the end of the day where you will be. So in a nutshell, budgeting is all about a balancing act. You need to balance. You need to add money somewhere. You need to reduce on another area. At the end of the day, you ensure that you are balanced. So it's basically about balancing. So as you have said, it's all a money management tool that shows you where money you need to make, what money you need to make ends meet. That is what is critical. Live comfortably and increase your wealth. We relate to that. That is the main objective of all about budgeting. We want to ensure that we get to plan for our finances in a manner that at the end of the day we become wealthy. So that is the key objective about it, so that you shield yourself from the various aspects that we have mentioned earlier on, the 4 issues. So what do we do when you're doing our budgeting? A critical thing that we need to do is to look at the reason first, probably why budgeting often fails. Because we realize that everybody has an idea what budgeting is all about, but we don't understand why it fails to work. From the responses, everybody actually plans for their monies, isn't it? So the major reasons why we fail to be successful with our budgeting is people never prioritize expenses properly. So we have all these lists of expenses that we want to take care of, but we are not giving good prioritization. So you realize at the end of the day, you are operating on a wider scope of expenditure that you want to meet, but the income is constrained. So we need to mitigate that problem by prioritizing. It's good if you list them down properly and be able to see what is really key. What do I really need to pay? And what can I postpone, as you are mentioning? But I doubt if rent is one of those that you can take as an avenue of postponing. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is to failure to budget practically for normal out-of-pocket expenses, like probably groceries, in this case, shopping ya mboga, mambo ya stima, mambo ya gas, cooking gas. Mostly it's things to do with the small items that we ignore are the ones that are actually critical in the process of budgeting. So you keep always thinking, si mboga ni ngapi? Unauzaje mboga? Kwa nyumbani. Unauza 20 bob or 50 bob on a daily basis. You ignore that because you are thinking, see hiyo niko nayo. Just keep paying. But again, you have to plan for such. When we do that, you realize you can do a lot of savings from tracking even your small expenditures, which we tend to fail to plan for them because we think we have the money that can cover it. In the mind, yes, it's practical. You know very well that I have the money. But if you do not plan for them, you realize at the end of the day, you do not, you may exceed the amount that you would have thought you should have spent, and you do not have a control mechanism. So those are the small items that are critical that you track, so that at the end of the month, you are able to know how much should I be channeling towards this particular direction. And we look at the end of the day how to do the saving. Another aspect is the failure to plan for the unexpected. Do we have any mechanism of mitigating our emergency occurrences? Okay. Okay, it's interesting. As you're saying, it seems it is also an aspect that we need to plan for.
No, but how do we plan with the emergency loan?
Okay, that's a good way of also handling it. Because at the end of the day, you have to plan for that. So that what happens, many things occur to people unexpectedly, and they end up losing more. Instead of gaining in terms of making the progression, becoming wealthy, you start going backwards. Because that emergency can hit you so hard that you go back maybe 100 steps and you had already made a lot of ground left. So I appreciate that all of us want to make sure that we are covered in terms of mitigating for any emergencies that come up, so that in the event that they come, we are in a position to still handle them and be able to progress without any challenges. And as you've mentioned, a few cases of ways of planning for that is an example of ensuring that you can access maybe some funds quickly whenever you need, if you do the samples. Another aspect would be to do insurance. Insurance is critical. I believe all of us are covered under the employer plan, whereby in case we have incidences of needing to be hospitalized, you are shielded. But it can go beyond that. Even when you are out of the workplace, you can take advantage of the available insurance plans that are out there. You could be paying a small premium every month, but it really helps whenever such occurrences do take place. So that will be another aspect that we can prepare ourselves for, so that we ensure that we do our budgeting properly. Another aspect is quarterly and annual expenses. We fail to also plan for them. I don't know if anyone could mention an expense that is quarterly or annual.
Maybe school fees.
School fees, that's a good example. Another example?
Car insurance.
Car insurance, that's also another example. Anything else? Annual. Mostly it's on those aspects of insurance, as you've mentioned, those are right. And you realize that we always fail to plan for them because they occur once probably in a year and we are thinking, by that time itakuwa nimejipanga, si ndio? So we tend to ignore. But again, they are critical in terms of putting them into the budget so that at the end of the day, we are able to prepare ourselves in advance. Probably by doing a bit of savings in advance. By the time that expense gets to be cleared, you already have it in place. So you don't have to hustle to look for that money at that point when there is a need. So that's also a critical component. Another critical one now, this one I think everyone relates to. We tend to spend more money than we pocket. And we know it. It's not something that is very new. We know it very well that this money is not enough, but somehow the spending is a continuous process.
Maybe
Maybe you can check in Dennis. Yes.
But I've been really discussing a lot about that, and I have some friends that we normally discuss on issues of like how do you spend, how do you save and all that. And there's this friend of mine who always believes that it's not about cutting down costs and all that. It's about looking for opportunities to make more money. Like right now, if you talk of VAT, all those things, and you talk of coming up with the strategies to reduce costs, will really tell you, I don't know where do you leave this? Because actually what you need to do then is look for opportunities to make more money, not cut down on costs. So I really get confused with this friend of mine. Yeah, actually,
Appreciate your sharing. Maybe just to give a response, but I tend to understand why he reasons that way. Because he's also taking the mitigation measures to ensure that the more he spends, he's also gaining from somewhere. So that expenditure is driven by some income that he's also trying to get. So at the end of the day, he knows what he's doing because you do not have to just handle the cost side alone when you are handling balancing of your budget. You don't have to deal with the cost alone, but the cost is an easier one to deal with because you have the control. But with the income, somehow it has its own challenges. So before you get to be assured that you are getting your income, I believe you can take more control on what you already have. It's easier for you to deal with what you already have than what you do not know how it's going to come from. So I'm sure probably it can work in the meantime because he's probably gaining with the income that he's doing. But what about the other scenario whereby it fails to come in and here you are continuing with the expenditure? You see there will be a disconnect at some point. But anyway, again, the concepts on how people do their spending is driven by many other factors. And you'll appreciate the important thing that you pointed out is that it's driven also by personal values. So the way someone behaves is based on how people have been brought up, and probably the way someone will spend their money is related to how they were brought up, or they know that by spending, that is actually the biggest thing that you can do. Something like that. So that is an area that probably we may not cover today, but we could have a session whereby we'll go deeper into the aspects of how values can affect our finances, in that it affects the goal that we want to have in life. But today we may not cover that. So thanks for the sharing. Now, as we've seen, with the aspect of budgeting, we need to do our planning properly, and we've realized that with budgeting, when we fail to prioritize our expenses, we open up an opportunity whereby we keep spending haphazardly. So we do not have control of where our money is going. So what do we need to do? I think the first critical aspect is the listing of expenses. As I've mentioned before, we need to list all our expenditure where possible for the whole period that you are talking about. And I think from what you have seen, the best way is to ensure that, the whole expenditure that you have for a particular year is captured. When you have an annualized sort of listing of expenses on where you know I need to spend on insurance, I need to spend on fuel, I need to spend on transport, on food, all those expenditures that we have an annualized sort of listing of expenses, a tentative, that can help you with generating a good way of prioritizing. You'll realize that when you're doing the listing of expenses, some are discretionary. What do we mean by discretionary? Discretionary are the ones that are not a must that you get to spend on. You can probably delay, or you can postpone. You can push them ahead. And I believe we understand that you can do without them. That is just basically the explanation. So discretionary expenses are things to do with probably travel, holidays, you want to have a vacation. It is not a must, but again, it's important. You realize that at the end of the period, at the end of the day, you would want to have that fund. Because they are the ones that normally, at the end of the day, when you fail to budget for those discretionary expenses, they are the ones that normally bust the budget. I don't know if you've realized that. You have a budget for the month. You know the key ones: rent is critical, your food is critical, transport is critical, fuel is critical, insurance is critical. You know, you can't avoid them. School fees is critical. But now there are those other things that probably you can evaluate and see if there is a need. At the end of the day, what happens with the budgeting? You have to have the major components that you have to plan for. Number one is on expenditure, which is a must. Number two is on savings, which you also have to budget, isn't it? You have to do the savings, the expenditure, probably a bit of investing, which is also critical. And then probably under expenses, you can break it down into the critical ones, the core ones, the unexpected, and these discretionary ones, which have to be in place. So when you do that, you will be able to take charge of where your money will be going at the end of the day. One aspect that I wanted to touch on is the idea that you have to plan for your expenditure, for your savings, and for your investments. And we have a guiding rule. Just someone did some research somewhere and assessed that at the end of the day, what expenditure should you use on probably an example rent? We have a guiding rule of thumb. What percentage do you go with of your income? Let's say on salary, on rental. 20%. Another
Nearly 40.
40%.
I'm saying it takes
Nearly 40. 25. From your experience. What about experience-wise? From experience.
Nearly 40.
40.
I'm a lean.
15%. We know the rule of thumb says that you should not spend more than a third of your income. Not the main investment income, but generally if you put all the sources of income into one basket, you should ideally live in an area where you pay or you use a third of your income. So if your sources of income is only salary or plus other investments, you should be able at the end of the day to live somewhere probably where a third of that income should not go into anything else other than rent. You'll be actually on track. So you can do an assessment personally and see how much rent am I paying, what is my income, does it make sense?
Being net or
That's the net.
gross?
Most people work with gross, but they don't realize that's not money that is available to them, isn't it? So we end up using the gross, you end up spending more than you're supposed to. So you should look at what hits into your account. Of course, the net before you do other payments. Savings, we have a guiding rule of thumb, at least 10% of your income, 10%
Of the net still.
of the net, 10%. If you keep doing 10% and minimum, that is what is encouraged. You can do more. But if you can do 10, you are on track. You can mitigate all these aspects of inflation. You will have taken care of them. It's a rule of thumb. If you work on 10%, you will have shielded yourself from many things. But you can do more. It's encouraged. Investments, you can also do another 10%. Savings is different. Investment is different. Money that should not even be getting to get anywhere is 20% of your money. Put it aside. You can invest 10%, save 10%. What it does is that it will shield you from emergencies because you have savings. You will also be generating more income by doing this investments. And I believe probably we'll also have another session, hopefully, on investments, whereby you can go deeper. So for today, we want to handle the practical personal budgeting. So how do we do it? We want to just see a template that can assist. It's a simplified one for purposes of the people who don't do a lot of accounting work. It's a basic way of taking charge of your monies, just understanding where your income is coming from. Just have the income, make sure you have your expenses, and then at the end of the day, you'll have a savings out of that. So for this case, we were expecting 515. Won't talk of the 1,000.
Yes.
Yes.
You want to have expenditures of about 360, then you have a savings of about 155. It's just the concept behind how you do your budgeting, but in a simplified manner. What will happen is that you realize for us, for each on an individual level, probably the number one item that is a source of income is on salary. We could have other sources of income, maybe rental for those who have buildings. Maybe you have a farm, you generate some income from there. The one that I said is about rent, which is constant. Utilities, you can average them. But I know for those who have families, holidays is another period when you have more expenditure on that line. Shopping, probably those are the food items. And then there's another aspect of transport, the critical ones. And of course, as I mentioned earlier on, discretionary expenses are also to be planned. Insurance, throw it in there. Know what you have at the end of the day. Ideally, this is how we do it. But you will realize that the best approach to do proper budgeting is to do the reverse. You're not supposed to be doing the income minus expenses, then I see what I remain with. You remember the percentages we've just spoken about? You start from there. Do the savings first before you even do anything. The guiding rule is that you're supposed to pay yourself first, isn't it? So by paying yourself, it means you're appreciating the fact that I've done so much and I need to do something about myself. And that aspect is doing the saving.
I mean, it was
Yes.
those savings. Like, for instance, if I have two daughters,
Yes.
and then I'm saving every month for
Yes.
their education and all that,
Yes,
will that fall under savings?
yes.
Yeah, but then that 10% then needs to be broken further, because I'm looking at savings as you explained, something that maybe can help you in case of emergency. But you see, if I'm putting this money in some kind of an education,
Plan.
yeah, and every month I have to keep on paying that, then that is outside that 10%, or it's still within the 10%.
As a rule of thumb, we do 10% geared towards savings, and whichever form that savings take wouldn't be so material as long as it is meant to shield you from something. You know what you are basically doing with that education plan, which is good, is shielding yourself from the shocks of having to pay the school fees later on. So you are doing the saving. So the 10% can be within it, it's okay, but as I said, that's the minimum. If you can do 10, well and good. You can do more, the better. So you can choose to say, me I want to do 10% purely going into savings, and then probably have other savings plans that can be added up on top of the ones that you already have. So it's just a rule of thumb. It doesn't mean you have to stick to it. My 10% could be someone's 5%. My 5% could be someone's 10%. So again, at the end of the day, it all revolves around how you do your goal setting. We need to do from the reverse. Do the savings first, and then see what remains. Plan for that. So that when you plan for what remains after doing the constant savings, which are going to be helping you in the long run, You can even do another saving from the next batch of money that is available, which will now be the bonus savings. So you'll have done the 10% initially, and then come down here, see again what remains after doing the expenditure. So we start from the reverse. That is the main critical thing. Don't do the looking at the income, then do the expenditures to make sure that you're catching up with the income. No. I think we've discussed these issues, the aspect of having to prioritize. You need to figure what is the unexpected expenditure so that you ensure that you have planned for them. And the way to do that is to capture those that are unexpected. Over time, you can have that input go into your budget by having a constant figure. So you can evaluate over time. If you keep tracking your expenditure daily, with the time you realize you have a constant figure that you can work with. We need to just keep having the right mindset and getting to ensure that you follow it through. Also, aspect that we need to pick from this is that when you have already spent your money that you have planned for, at the end of the month, there will be something that probably remains. Push it to the following month as a source of income also. You put into the planning for that. You roll it over. Either you choose to take it into the savings or make it be available for the next month's expenditure. That way again you start at the top. So you have this money that remains, you put it on top, add to the income, keep doing again the normal. So keep doing that over and over. That is a mistake that we do. Whenever we see there is any available money, we start thinking, where can we put this money? I've also been there. I keep looking, si bado account iko nayo. You go to the ATM, kuna pesa. What can I do? You start thinking, what can I do? As I had said, I've mentioned earlier, we need to do the budgeting of savings. You budget for savings. What it means is we put it aside from the word go. How do we make it work for us? If you do not have enough money to take care of the priorities, you need to find a way to generate more cash. That's a big question mark. Now that brings the question of, okay, I'm spending more than what I'm having, what do I need to do? And the basic point of starting again is those savings rules, the percentages. Follow them. Over time you realize they really make sense. And I can talk from experience because over a period there was a time when I was really deep into quagmire in terms of finances. You wake up in the morning and you're thinking, what do I do? How do I get out of this? So personally I've experienced it, and I think most of us would identify with the same, and it makes you think. You have to think now, how do I generate more cash or more money for that matter, so that I can take care of any other priorities that you have. Because you realize from your prioritization, you identify what you need to spend on. But if your money is not enough to handle priorities, know that you are in trouble. So we need to do something about that. As I said earlier also, if something is not a priority, take it over to the next period. You can skip some things. Yeah. Then you can also look at the discretionary expenses, see what you are willing to sacrifice for that time, so that you avoid getting into the negative. On a different note, you could also see how you can cut down on some simple things like groceries. You identify what works for you, because again, we are all different. Whatever we face at the end of the day is different, but as long as the main objective is being attained or planning for the things. But that's
it could be single, or it could also be, have a partner who's
Yes.
also working.
Yes.
So whose income are we talking about here? Okay.
You are
because
income.
there-
Yours
yours-
and hers.
Yours and ours, the household
Is that
income.
let's look at practicality. I think Dennis is raising a
okay,
critical
I'm
issue.
looking at a situation here.
Yes.
We are both working. And then when we talk about income, everybody has a different at the end of the month. Then when we do the calculations, of course, things actually differ depending on families and all that. But how do we look at that when we look at that income? Because we're assuming that it's me, Dennis, alone. I remember it could be Dennis and my wife who's also working and all that. So do you approach it from that angle, or you just, if it is 10%, I look at it as Dennis?
That's a valid question, and I think maybe I don't know with experience. Probably someone can share an experience. Miriam. Maybe you can share with us an
For me, I'm looking
experience.
at this in terms of it's combined, not combined because we never put our money together practically, but clearly we have some expenses that unajua rent inakuanga yako. It will never get back to you. But you also have your own expenses that you know you'll never get into that. So those are, for me, I look at it, when I'm looking at the rent this much, you're not the one who pays rent needs to be in my expenses list.
Okay.
But the other expenses are there in my list.
Typically,
Yes.
if we combine the budget, it may not work.
That's
It doesn't actually work. And so it is good that you do your own budget and she does her own budget. Yeah.
Excellent.
Actually, what I've seen work, as we do our own budgets, then we say we want to invest in this as a team. So this is what you're going to contribute to the common pool for the two of us. But the rest
you
we have zangu na zake.
I think that's an area we may not have a real control on how to handle it. But I think at the end of the day, the spirit should be that you still get to achieve a saving from both as partners. Probably we'll just move quickly. I think on issues to do with, you can see how you can make partial payments. Also for Nairobi water, I know people have bills on water. Sometimes you can make partial payment long before the bill is due. I know initially with Kenya Power you could pay partly and they will not disconnect you. That's just an example. So you can pay on your water bill, you can negotiate. Now, this takes us now to the next point, which is determining how much you're worth. I wouldn't spend so much time on this, it will take long. We are actually almost coming to the end. Determining your net worth. What is net worth?
How much is your worth?
How much?
If you were to be liquidated,
Yes.
how much?
How much will you be worth? Do you mean being sold?
Not to be sold, but the things I have.
Okay, yeah. That's basically what you want to look at. How much would you value yourself? And the critical components, as you can look at the table, that you need to put into consideration is to know the key things, which are assets. I believe all of us know what assets are. Asset money. We know what those are. Those are there. The items that are tangible and you can relate to. Probably you have a plot, you have a house, a car, they still fall under that category. So the best way to do the initial assessment, if you want to get out of the rat of handling budgets, you have to assess your net worth. And you need to list down your assets, list down your cash flows. Cash flows means the liquid money, what you get as salary, the other income that probably comes in on a constant basis, so that you also add up to the assets. The liabilities are the expenditures that you have. You could have long-term and short-term. It could be a mortgage, that's a long-term. A car loan is also maybe medium-term. School loan could be short-term. So those are liabilities, the things that you need to pay off over time. So when you do a quick assessment, you need to determine where you are at a particular point. This is also another good starting point. It's a tool that will tell you how much you're worth. And once you determine your expenses, probably on a monthly basis, you can do like an overall assessment for a period, like a year. How much, you do a snapshot. Actually, this one you do a snapshot. You determine your assets and their cash flows, your liabilities and your expenses. Once you do a snapshot, it will tell you where you are. And assets and cash flow are less than your liabilities and expenses, then you are insolvent. It means your rasilimales and liabilities, rather the cash flows and the assets are less, and the liabilities and expenses are more. So when you do that snapshot, it will tell you where you are first, or where you need to start working from. So if you are in the negative, what do I do? You ask yourself that big question, what do I need to do to get out of that position? So when you realize that you are in an insolvent scenario, then you need to look for other ways of getting additional income. Because what it means, your income at the moment is not able to sustain your expenditures and your liabilities, isn't it? So you have to look for a way of generating more income, and what it means is that you have to invest. So again, the starting point will be you need to start saving. That's the triggering point. when you save and you need to invest. So before you start the investment, keep putting that money aside as you look for a way of getting additional income. All right, and lastly, we'll want to handle on saving tips and ideas. These ones, we relate to them. And I think it will just be good to share a few of them that probably we do not take into consideration at some point, but they are also critical in terms of guiding us towards achieving the goal of saving so that we can become more wealthy. You can invest, you can take care of all those other discretionary expenses. So ideally, we are looking forward to putting money somewhere so that you can use it for a rainy day, isn't it? Someone said that a penny saved is a penny earned. So usiko unasema ati a man is money before you save. It's what you save is actually what you earn. So why do you need to save? I believe we know very well. Of course, we are taking care of the emergencies again. We are going to take advantage of opportunities, as you mentioned. Maybe an investment opportunity will come, we can take advantage of it, and we want to reach financial goals. So those are the key reasons why we want to put our money into savings. The golden rule again is to pay yourself first. You want to save to reach the goals, and from each pay you save first, and then you spend second. So that's the guiding rule. You have to save first. Don't do the spending and then save later. No, save it, and then whatever remains, you can plan for expenditure. If you get any extra money, sometimes you could get into a windfall. It's a jackpot. It's part of your savings. You can put it somewhere. So it's part of your savings. I think we'll just quickly go through the tips, the saving tips, which we identify with. Maybe just to emphasize further, you just need to take charge of it. It's all about spending less. Spending less, I know, is very positive. It's relative. So it means probably cutting down on something that you need to spend on, but you still have to bring it down. A rule called the 30 days rule. What it means is that if you really want to probably spend on something, don't just do it immediately. Hold on to it first. Hold on to the thought. You could go probably more so. This is to address the issue of window shopping or impulse buying. You go somewhere and you realize you want to buy something, which happens all the time. The only thing that you can control easily is what we have. So what you already have, where we take it to is what we can control. So in 30 days, make sure you hold on to the thought, look at the item, keep thinking through it for about 30 days. If that thing is still ringing in your mind after 30 days, then it's important. Go back and get it. But if it's not, chances are you didn't. Yes, so you would have skipped it. So you can take advantage of that rule. Of course, we all know this, we relate with it. Write a list before you go for shopping and stick to it. If it's a list, you know this is what you needed. Don't go beyond that. Don't spend big money entertaining your children. Okay, I don't mean that is an ambiguous statement. It doesn't mean that we need not be spending money on entertaining children. But realize they are our biggest driver on expenditure. If you do not master your kids, they are the ones who drive actually expenditure. So just take those who have. What happens is with kids, they do not understand lacking. They don't. If they already have it, it means they need to be having it. So you need to inculcate the thought of, like for example, for that ball, you just use it as an example. And you don't have to apply it. I'm just going to mention is that probably they need to know or understand that if they lose a ball, they can't get another one. So they start making decisions also. They take ownership of decisions so that they don't drive the budget unnecessarily to go up. Because with kids, they'll keep asking, nataka hii, daddy, nataka hii, mommy, all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we agreed. The last toy I bought, alikuja kulia. Ati akima kwa month ni 100, sile 150, 100.
You
Because
see?
he knows the price. Utanunulia ingine tena.
Uh-huh.
I bought him because he kept on insisting.
Yes.
After that, he kept, sijaharibu. So you're clearly not going to buy another one. Eh? So of course now the results came when I was position one. I'm like, what do I buy? I said, Gary, so you're clearly tutanunulia. Nipeleke swimming.
So it's all about, I think from experience, as you have heard also from Miriam, we need to take charge. Just find your ingenious ways. Have some wisdom on how to handle the kids so that they don't get to drive your expenditure, because they are very good in that, because they are open. For them, they don't understand lacking. You also have to manage and give up on expensive habits like probably cigarettes, alcohol, the luxuries. You can avoid them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you don't need to do them. I know this is something that is personal, but you can moderate. It's all about moderation.
What if it is part of the expenses?
That's the planning.
Give up, manage
Expensive.
expenses.
Expenses.
If it's listed on the expenses, it means you've taken care of it. You plan for it. Because what happens with the luxuries, there's a tendency to move out of the way. Like as you were mentioning, you would have a meeting with someone, but you end up spending more. So we can move a bit quickly. I know time is not on our side, but we are bringing this to an end. Don't also spend money to distress. I believe you understand that.
Yes.
What happens is that you are spending because you are driven nuts by something else. You are not solving the real problem. There's something behind your mind, but the way of showing it is by spending. And I believe, I think, so avoid. If it's something that is stressing, the other mechanism of distressing. It could be in doing the playing and all that, but we won't go into the details. Talk to your loved ones about what your dreams are. When you share your goals as partners, this is more related to people who are probably in a relationship. Share what your objectives are, the goals. When you put them together, when your minds are in one focus, you take charge of where you're going and the destiny as a relationship. There's also another 10-second rule. This one is almost related to the 30 days, but what it means is that sometimes you would really need also something, but at the point of which you've picked it, just take about 10 seconds to think through it also before you confirm. More so for things that are not listed. Maybe you did not list, but you realize, okay, I had forgotten, but do I really need to pick it? So probably in the point of handling it, think through it also, so that it gives you a bit of a window to see whether you really need it. Because we realize we are very impulsive with purchasing. So you need to look for ways of handling that. And this is also another rule. So take 10 seconds. The issue is to have an idea notebook with you. Don't trust on your mind all the time. The mind can just go haywire. So just keep putting things down. I think that's emphasizing the need to do listing. Don't ignore pocket change. You could save them. Sorry.
Piggy bank.
You could have a piggy bank. We all understand what a piggy bank is.
Yes.
Yeah. Unarusha huko change. This is also relative. As we had said, we have the golden rule of a third. You don't have to live in. Now this is all about values. You don't have to live in a posh area because of status. At the end of the day, it doesn't count. Just be realistic. If you cannot afford it, you don't have to push it. So, but again, it's okay. It's about lifestyle. If you have any loans, it is also good to bring them together. It helps with the interest, and it helps also with the managing. Don't have too much loans spread out. At the end of the day, you are losing out. It's better when you consolidate your loans. So if you have a bank loan, maybe SACCO loan, or several other banks, try to bring them together. And especially for banks, you find most people can apply for different loans elsewhere. Well, with that, there is a catch. When you apply for different loans in a different point, there is that processing fee. I know we won't delve into the loans today, but we will probably have a session. We can dig deeper into the loans and understand the history behind loans. There's always a processing fee. You applied for 1.1 million, but when you go to your account, you realize what gets it?
1.5.
It was 1.1, maybe million. but you realize what gets into account is 1 million. You're wondering, where did the 100,000 go? But I applied for 1.1. There's a processing fee. So if you keep losing 100,000 in those different loans, that's a huge impact. So that's the point. You need to work with probably one key financial partner, and you manage your loans. Pay bills on time to avoid penalties. Yeah, so I think that's very clear. Take advantage of free money. Free money could come in different ways, but I think a good example that we can use here in CARE is the matching of savings with the employer. I don't know if any of us does extra saving beyond the pension that we are being given. I know I'm a culprit also, but I need to do something about it. Yes. Because you realize you can lower your taxes at the end of the day, but you end up saving more. I don't know who has taken advantage of it. Judy, Greg. So you have people who are taking advantage. Under the pension scheme, pension plan, the employer can contribute equivalent to your whatever you are contributing extra. At the moment, they are doing the minimum. How much percentage? The ones that was improved, is it 10% or more? It should be about 14. So 14% of your salary is being saved by the employer directly, isn't it? The pension.
Yes.
But now, there's a leeway whereby you can do up to a maximum of, is it 20,000? 24, depending on the bands. I think we can, the HR can share with us, Houston can share with everyone. I think it's an opportunity for us to still make more savings, whereby we are saving a little bit extra and the employer is matching the same again. So meaning you are doing double savings. So it's a real opportunity to save more. So we can investigate that with Houston. Another thing is we identify with what you are seeing on the screen, credit card. This is a main culprit. For me, this is one of the ones that really affected me very much. Credit card. How many of us own a credit card? Everybody has. No. If you can avoid it, good. But if you use it, you have to know how to use it properly. The idea behind credit card is that you should pay it off immediately when the month is at the end, rather at the end of the month. Whatever you use, if you can pay it off fully, that's good. You're managing it well. But when you are leaving it to roll over, their percentages are crazy. It's not, they are doing at 6.5% per month, not per year. So if it's 6.5% on average, if you do for a whole year, that's over 80%. So that's a scam in a way. So you are being made to pay for what you may not need to pay. So if you can avoid it, good. But if you have it, manage it. Just make sure you pay it off. It's a way of using other people's money. It's an avenue. In that you have a window of about 50 days. I think most banks is 50 days, where you can use that money. But if you bring it back in full after 50 days, before 50 days are over, you are safe. If it goes beyond, you get into the trap. So I think for me, at some point, I was in that particular trap, whereby I got into it. I kept paying, but at some point, in case because of emergency, something came up, and I was not able to pay. And nowadays, they encourage it very much. I think for these banks are calling around all the time, encouraging people to take it. There's a catch in that, but it's not a must. But if you have it, make sure you manage it properly. As we come to an end, we all make mistakes on finances. You realize that. From experience, we'll get to a point where we realize you also get into those circumstances that you may not have anticipated, but it's real life. So it doesn't mean you are already beaten up. You can still get out of that. You have to keep focusing ahead again at the end of the day, and don't give up. Even if you're in the negative, it doesn't mean you have lost the race. No. It doesn't mean you've lost it. No. There's an opportunity to get out of that, and you will be able to arrest all the issues that would come with that. But the point is taking the initiative. The number one key thing to do to get out of that particular situation, or to make a step further, is to acknowledge that you're in that trouble. When you own it up, it opens up the way for you to take charge and to get out of it. You take that concise focus and say, okay, I want to get out of this. And when you take it in reality, you'll be able to get out of it over time. So that is all that we have for today. unless kuna maswali for now.